The Herald Scotland on Wednesday, the 30th of October 2024. From the news section. Emergency services attend Motherwell rail incident. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and it's being read by me, Corey. Rail lines have reopened after a person died on the railway near a busy station. Emergency services were called in to deal with the incident on the line between Motherwell and Lanark, which disrupted the morning commute in the Central Belt. All rail lines were closed between the two towns, with replacement bus services put in place. These services will accept train tickets at no extra cost. It is understood the lines have now reopened. Lines were closed just after 7 a.m. while emergency services attended the incident, with travellers heading to work facing disruption around 8:30 a.m. ScotRail said that the low-level trains were still arriving at Motherwell. A ScotRail spokesman said, following the emergency services dealing with an incident earlier today between Motherwell and Lanark, all lines have now reopened. Train services between Glasgow Central and Edinburgh via Carstairs are returning to normal, but some services may still be affected. We're asking customers to check the ScotRail app or our social media feeds for the latest updates. A spokesperson for the British Transport Police said, officers were called to Motherwell railway station at around 7 a.m. today, October 30th, following reports of a casualty on the tracks. Paramedics also attended, however, sadly a person was pronounced dead at the scene. The incident is not being treated as suspicious, and a report will be prepared for the Procurator Fiscal. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday, the 30th of October 2024. From the news section. First Bus Aberdeen staff agree pay rise of almost 10%. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and it's being read by me, Corey. Bus workers have backed a pay deal which will increase their wages by almost 10% over 2 years. Around 200 First Bus Aberdeen staff have agreed to a 7.2% pay rise increase, which will be backdated to August. Talks with representatives from the Unite Union resulted in an enhanced 5.2% offer from August 2024 from the company. A further 2% increase from August 2025 will then run until the end of July 2026. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham said, Unite has successfully negotiated a pay deal at First Bus Aberdeen for around 200 workers. It's another example of Unite delivering better jobs, pay and conditions across the bus industry. The wage rise affects drivers, coach drivers and administrative staff. Passenger carrying vehicles licence holders will receive a driver rate of £14 per hour after 1 year, while administrative staff will receive either a flat rate increase of £1,007 or up to 5.2% in year 1 and a minimum 2.2% in year 2, whatever is greater. Isabella Sutherland, Unite Industrial Officer, said, the deal over 2 years will produce a welcome pay boost for our members at First Bus Aberdeen. We are pleased the deal received the backing of our members. Unite is fully determined to ensure that we improve the rates of pay for bus workers across the North East. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 30th of October 2024. From the news section. 1 in 4 CCTV cameras in Glasgow is not working. This is an exclusive article by Gabriel McKay, and it's being read by me, Corey. More than a quarter of CCTV cameras in Glasgow do not work, new figures have revealed, with fears public safety could be at risk due to black spots in coverage. Glasgow City Council operates 439 cameras across the city, including mobile and fixed ones, which the council on its website describes as playing a vital role in public safety. However, GMB Scotland, one of the biggest public sector unions, says cuts to maintenance budgets have left 114 of those cameras out of action. The union warned that could lead to black spots in coverage and potentially put members of the public in danger. Council organiser John Slavin said, "The CCTV coverage across Glasgow has been crucial to keeping the city safe, but is being dismantled by 1,000 cuts. Step by step, whether by design or neglect, this essential safeguard for people of Glasgow is being lost. Until recently, our members monitored these cameras 24 hours a day, responding in real time to crimes and accidents. They had the ability to alert emergency services immediately and guide first responders as they arrived at the scene. Police, fire and ambulance crews would testify the invaluable support and insight of our members during the emergency response. It comes after councillors halved the monitoring of cameras, with a 24-hour service reduced to 12 hours between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. The number of staff was also cut from 18 to 9 in an effort to save the council £350,000. The union has written to council leader Susan Aitken expressing its concerns, highlighting recent disturbances related to far-right marches and football rivalries. Mr. Slavin said, "Our members have raised these concerns with management but received little reassurance. There seems to be neither the will nor the resource to maintain cameras and repair faults to restore the CCTV system, making the city's streets safer. The round-the-clock coverage has now been slashed, but at least there was still the ability to review the tapes and gather information and potential evidence. When 1 in 4 cameras are not even working, even that is lost. The money being saved by slowly driving this service into the ground is nothing compared to its contribution to the city and the protection of its people. What price do councillors put on making our streets safer, or a crime unsolvable, or a life lost?" The cuts to CCTV monitoring were phased in from September of last year, as part of a £50 million saving drive by Glasgow City Council. Though the cameras still record 24 hours a day, they are left in one position when they are not being monitored. The monitoring service, based on London Road, was previously monitored staffed around the clock and acted as an alert system for live incidents including assaults and robberies. A council spokeswoman said, "Regular maintenance and repairs are essential to ensure our CCTV network remains effective and responsive. Whilst this means a number of cameras may be temporarily offline at any given time, the service looks to prioritise coverage in the most critical areas. The number of cameras currently out of service will change on a day-to-day basis as these are repaired and restored to operations." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was an exclusive article written by Gabriel McKay, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 30th of October 2024. From the news section. Scottish alcohol-free beer brand partners with UK's biggest pub group. This article has been written by Craig Williams, and it's being read by me, Corey. A Scottish alcohol-free beer brand is celebrating a nationwide listing in UK's largest pub group. Days has gained a national listing for its 0.0% lager and pale ale in Stonegate. The launch comes off the back of a 12-month period in which Days has enjoyed a 100% year-on-year growth, gained a listing in Sainsbury's, and increased its distribution in Tesco and Waitrose. Mike Gamble, co-founder of Days Brewing, said, "Launching into Stonegate is a massive moment for Days. With 30% of all pub and bar visits in the UK now alcohol-free, we're looking forward to partnering with the UK's biggest pub group to offer our award-winning 0.0% beers to modern drinkers who still want that brilliant beer moment in the pub but are living healthier lifestyles and moderating their alcohol consumption." Nick Marks, Group Commercial Director at Stonegate, added, "We are really socialising differently, and as our business evolves, it's important we cater to that trend towards moderation. We're excited to work with Days in our sites across the country to show people that you can enjoy a delicious 0.0% beer and still be part of that great pub experience." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Craig Williams, and it was read by me, Corey.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 31st of October, from the news section, airline launches new route from Scotland to historic European city. Report by Craig Williams. An airline has launched a new route from Scotland to a historic European city. Austrian Airlines will arrive at Edinburgh Airport for the first time next summer with new direct flights to Vienna. The airline will touch down at Scotland's busiest airport to operate 3 services each week to the Austrian city, further strengthening the links between two of Europe's iconic capitals. Flights will depart on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays on an Airbus A320 aircraft, with services running from June to September. The new route means all Lufthansa hubs are now served by the airline group from Edinburgh, enhancing connectivity across the globe. Kate Cherry, Chief Commercial Officer, Aero at Edinburgh Airport, said, "The arrival of Austrian Airlines is more great news for passengers, strengthening the links between two of Europe's most fascinating cities in Edinburgh and Vienna." The airline's decision to come to Edinburgh for the first time goes to show the strength of the market here and the allure that the city, and Scotland, has as one of the world's best tourist destinations. We're always working hard to ensure passengers have as much choice as possible from EDI, and we're looking forward to welcoming Austrian Airlines and working with them to facilitate another connection to the beautiful city of Vienna. Jim Fairley, Minister for Connectivity, said, "The announcement of this new service between Edinburgh and Vienna is very welcome, as it will provide another boost to our international connectivity. This will strengthen the links between Scotland and Austria, which is excellent news for business connectivity, as well as helping grow the economic benefits of tourism. We recognise the importance of Scotland's international connectivity, and we want to see it grow at all Scotland's airports, capitalising on the huge demand to visit Scotland from around the globe. I wish Edinburgh Airport and Austrian Airlines every success, and look forward to seeing the flights take off next summer." And that report was written by Craig Williams and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 31st of October, from the news section, number of Scottish schools targeted with malicious messages. Report by Mark McDougall. Police Scotland have launched an investigation after schools across Glasgow and the west of Scotland were targeted with malicious messages. An unknown number of schools in Glasgow, South Lanarkshire, East Renfrewshire and East Dunbartonshire were sent a malicious email on Thursday morning. Police were called at around 8:50am and they are now carrying out inquiries about the situation. It is not yet known what was in the emails, but police are treating it seriously and are looking into the matter that has affected various different schools. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, "Officers from Police Scotland were called to an incident believed to be a malicious email made to a number of schools in Glasgow, South Lanarkshire, East Renfrewshire and East Dunbartonshire around 8:50am on Thursday 31st of October 2024. Inquiries have been carried out in conjunction with the relevant local authorities." And that article was written by Mark McDougall. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 31st of October, from the news section, over 7,000 detentions under Mental Health Act last year. Article written by Nick Forbes. There were more than 7,000 detentions for compulsory mental health care and treatment in Scotland last year, figures show. The data, in a report published by the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland, MWCS, shows there were 7,109 detentions between April the 1st, 2023 and March the 30th, 2024. This is a rise of 5.6% on the year before, above the average year-on-year increase of 4.2%. Just under half of the 7,109 detentions started with an Emergency Detention Certificate, EDC, which is designed to be used in crisis situations to detain someone who requires urgent care or treatment for mental ill health. Under the Mental Health Act, an EDC should be decided by a doctor with the consent of a mental health officer, a specialist social worker, except where obtaining this consent is impracticable. The MWCS said it was concerned by the fact only 35.8% of emergency detentions in 2023-24 had the consent of a mental health officer, which was the lowest rate for the last 10 years. The report noted mental health officer consent provides a safeguard against arbitrary detention and called for local services to assess why in many parts of the country it is now clearly the norm that it is impractical to consult a mental health officer. Dr. Arun Chopra, medical director at the MWCS, said, "Once again, we are concerned about the way emergency detentions are taking place. Today's report shows that whilst the expectation is that a mental health officer should be involved in these detentions, in nearly 2/3 of cases there was no mental health officer consent. For young people aged under 25, mental health officer consent was present in only 32% of cases, the lowest of any age group. This is particularly troubling given that they are perhaps the most vulnerable of a vulnerable group of people." The MWCS also said a disproportionate number of detentions affected people living in more deprived areas of the country, which they said showed the link between deprivation and mental ill health. They said more than 35% of emergency detentions related to people from the 20% most deprived areas, with only 10% in the 20% most affluent areas. The MWCS publishes the figures each year as part of its statutory duty to monitor how the Mental Health Act is being applied. Mental Wellbeing Secretary Marie Todd said, "Patient safety is always our highest priority. That is why, in some cases, compulsory treatment is needed to provide a person with medical treatment to alleviate suffering and for the protection of both the person and others. Compulsory treatment is only allowed under mental health legislation in Scotland in very strict circumstances. An increase in compulsory treatments may represent an increase in need for such treatments, but may also represent the effects of more people coming forward for treatment and increase awareness and response to mental ill health." And that report was written by Nick Forbes.
This article is from the Herald on Thursday the 31st of October 2024. It is in the Voices section and the headline is, "It's starting to feel like humanity is one giant suicide cult," and the report is by Neil Mackay. I don't much believe the theories of Freud and Jung, those granddaddies of psychoanalysis. Do all men want to murder their father and have sex with their mother, as Freud's Oedipus complex has it? Are all women gripped by rivalry towards their mother for the sexual attention of their father, as Jung's corresponding Electra complex claims? I doubt it. That doesn't mean that psychotherapy is bunkum. It's not. Or that many of our dysfunctions aren't found in that creepy old room named childhood. They are. But theories simply remain theories unless there's consistent proof to establish them as facts. However, some parts of Freud's philosophy ring very true and do appear to have foundation in reality, specifically his thoughts on the death drive, the human compulsion towards self-destruction. It's always been with us, We've torn each other to pieces since we settled down and became civilised. Isn't that the irony of our species? It seems, according to prehistory scholars, that as hunter-gatherers we were a rather peaceful, egalitarian bunch, seldom getting into much more than minor conflict, and happy to share resources. Once we built those first cities, though, we began to enslave and brutalise each other. Those early city builders were somewhat like Freud, simply inventing ideas and calling them reality. Why should a shiny yellow metal pulled from the ground confer power and wealth on the owner? Perhaps it's part of growing older, but as I reached midlife, I felt humanity's death drive throb around me in ways I find terrifying. If you know the opening lines of Dante's Divine Comedy, midway upon the journey of life, I find myself within a dark forest. That's the feeling I had, and still have, when I look at the trajectory of my species. I grew up in a war zone, 1970s Northern Ireland, and in a wider world facing nuclear annihilation. So being aware of this dreadful human urge isn't a new experience. It's just that age, maturity maybe, makes its presence more acute. It's the sense of humanity failing to learn from past mistakes, which really seems to prove the death drive exists. In the lifetime of my parents and grandparents, our species created 2 world wars, the Holocaust and the Gulag, and flattened Nagasaki and Hiroshima. For a few decades, we calmed down, if you can call Vietnam, September 11, and the Iraq War calm. Now, as we reprise 1920s hysteria a century on, it seems we're itching to do it all over again, except this time we really can wipe ourselves out. Are we just doomed to keep on destroying each other? Where will Ukraine take us? If the country falls, where does Putin go next? How will the West respond? I've just checked the doomsday clock, another theoretical device marking our death drive. It's currently at 90 seconds to midnight. Where will the Middle East take us? Regional war between Israel and Iran? Regional wars rarely remain regional. In Ukraine, the Middle East, and that dreadful, shamefully forgotten war in Sudan, human rights are butchered alongside humans. The Geneva Convention exists now in name only. Crimes against humanity are carried out all around the world with impunity. The notion of genocide is a staple of our news cycle. How, 80 years after we did what we did as a species, can this be happening again? Our death drive encompasses the entire planet. We rape and assault the very earth we stand on with as much ferocity as we rape and assault fellow humans. More than 1/3 of the world's tree species were found this week to be facing extinction. If the trees die, so do we. We might be very clever hairless monkeys, but we cannot invent oxygen. The Earth's carbon sinks are breaking down. Our government is actually considering passing legislation to allow the use of bee-killing pesticides. So let's kill the trees while the earth vomits our filthy pollution back at us, and then finish off the pollinators. Indeed, the boundaries of our death drive reach beyond this poor planet. We are currently militarising space. What can you say about a species which would ring this beautiful little blue rock with lethality? Are we merely one giant suicide cult? Perhaps that's all that can be said. We suck our thumbs as billionaires harness AI against us, stealing our jobs, even using it to replace the very facet of humanity which makes us most human, our creativity. We will be spiritually dead if the music we listen to, the books we read, the dramas we watch, come not from us, but from machines. We kill our own pride and gumption also. Humanity seems content for a future in which there's a few oligarchs and a world of serfs. That very system has led to the near collapse of the global economy. We've chosen an economic model that's unsustainable, yet we keep on not simply defending it, but wanting it to mount in intensity. It's like taking a razor to your flesh and every day making the wound deeper. Perhaps the greatest will to death is found in those who now reject humanity's shared reality. They kill reason. In America, during recent violent hurricanes, thousands believed the government was using weather as a weapon. This isn't a mere American disease, though in America the fever runs highest. Across the rest of the world, some would rather their children died of measles than get vaccinated. Some accuse doctors and nurses of mass murder because they tried to save us during the pandemic. The unwritten rule of column writing is that solutions must be provided. Here's problem X, we say, but never fear, meet solution Y. However, arrogance is the principal reason behind this mess humanity is in. So as one solitary human spinning on a rock in the darkness of space, I won't dare offer trite answers to the worst affliction of my species. I don't have solutions. All I can see is the problem. The answers will only be found through a collective effort by humanity. Indeed, maybe the act of working together, as our so-called primitive ancestors once did, is in itself the answer to what ails us. That report was by Neil Mackay. These snippets are from the Herald on Thursday the 31st of October 2024. They are found in the Voices section under the headline of The Diary and are compiled by Lorne Jackson. That sinking feeling. We're always hearing how wonderful past generations were compared to the current crop of Scots. But people from long ago had foibles of their own, notes David Donaldson. His grandmother was a teacher in the 1950s, when many tenements only had a shared WC on the half landing. She was once trying to encourage pupils to express themselves by describing the sort of wholesome lives they enjoyed outside the school gates. Who can tell me what their daddy does when he comes home from work, she asked. Please, miss, said a wee fella called Robert. Takes off his bunnet and pees in the sink. Hard to swallow. Science Corner. Insouciant reader Bruce Marshall says, I'm not sure I believe all the stuff I read in the news about genetically modified food being bad for you. I had a really tasty leg of salmon and feel fine. Just the Job. An epic tale of a humble childhood followed by inspiring triumph. Jeff Otten from Bathgate tells us, my English teacher often told me I'd never get a job if I spent all day looking out the window. So, I had quite the smug look in my face when I served him at the drive-through. Fright Night. Yikes, it's Halloween this evening and the diary is already cowering behind the sofa, terrified we'll have to share our sweeties with pesky geysers. The book we're perusing whilst hiding is the new release from Glasgow author D.D. Cudahy, The Wee Guide to Spooky Stuff. In the book, D.D. interviews locals about their paranormal experiences. One woman says, a girl at primary school told us she had a snottery nose all the time because when she was visiting a castle, a witch who had been hiding round a corner jumped out and put a spell on it. Dream On. A colourful remark from reader Georgina Barker, who points out, dreaming in colour is just a pigment of your imagination. Those snippets were compiled by Lorne Jackson.
From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 3rd of November, from the news section, how a community's dream of a new centre became clouded in unpaid rates. Report by David Leask. Robert Morris sits in his office in front of a glass coffee table covered in banknotes. The Glasgow businessman, easily identifiable by his trademark haircut, is gesticulating over the cash as he talks to unknown associates. The image was grabbed from Morris's own CCTV system and obtained by the Herald on Sunday. There are no laws against handling paper money, even in very large quantities. Morris, in his early 20s, inherited a huge Victorian furniture business set up by his grandfather. Now he lets out space in his family's former factories. And he sometimes does so, the Herald on Sunday can reveal, for wads of notes rather than cheques, direct debits or standing orders. As we report today, council officials are trying to get to the bottom of how tenants at one of Morris's former factories in Castlemilk ended up owing £1 million in non-domestic rates. There is nothing illegal about collecting rents in cash, but it is a very different business to the one first carried out by the Morris family at their premises on Ruthburn Avenue and Drakemar Drive. The building, an Edwardian structure, is now leased by H. Morris and Company from the council's property arm, but it is Morris who calls the shots at the site. Covering more than 300,000 square feet, the building has a storied past. H. Morris and Company, founded in 1904, made furniture for more than a century. It helped kit out our homes, offices and the great ships built on the Clyde. It also turned out parts for fairground attractions, seats for the ABC cinema chain, and World War II rifle butts. In 1984, Morris took over what was by then a struggling business. A year later, some 29 of his employees insisted on working a negotiated 39 hours a week. Morris fired them, sparking one of the highest profile workers' rights rows of the Margaret Thatcher era. "Everyone has the right to withdraw their label and go on strike," Morris said at the time, "but I have the right to sack them if they do." A decade ago, Richard Leonard, now a Labour MSP but then an organiser at the GMB, spoke about the huge row which followed the dismissals. What then ensued was one of the bitterest and longest industrial disputes in the city's history, Leonard told the Glasgow Times. It lasted 2 years. The dispute left a legacy, including in Castlemilk. Back in 2019, it was announced that Morris was offering spaces in the old factory to charities which, under normal circumstances, do not pay non-domestic rates. This facility was dubbed the Foundation. Later it was rebranded as Enterprise Park. Its redevelopment was supposed to create a hub for good causes and small business startups. Nicola McCurdy, a community volunteer, was one of those excited by this prospect. She helped form EPIC, a not-for-profit company. Initially called Enterprise Park Initiative Company, this outfit aimed to put life back into the factory, creating jobs and opportunities. But McCurdy and her colleagues first challenged Morris on his record with workers. "We had a conversation with him at the very beginning," she said. "We did explain the reputation of the Morris family in the area. He did categorically say, 'I know what has happened and I want to make amends.'" McCurdy told the Herald on Sunday that EPIC, which has since rebranded as Engaging People in Communities, had funding and tenants ready to enter the building. The project collapsed. "The relationship broke down when everything he, Morris, promised was not produced," said McCurdy. "One major sticking point was the safety of the building. The old factory was not fit to be used," McCurdy said. "During the pandemic years, work was carried out to clear the structure. Workers pulled down board that, it emerged, contained brown asbestos. Contractors were working on the site without protective equipment. The relationships between Morris and his lieutenants and staff, contractors and volunteers became strained. Complaints were made. The health and safety executives issued improvement notices against H. Morris and Company. The safety enforcement found the company in breach of both the Health and Safety at Work Act and asbestos handling regulations. Specifically, in an improvement policy issued in July 2023, the regulator said the company failed to provide your employees that are liable to be exposed to asbestos, or employees who supervise such persons, with adequate information, instruction and training about the risks and precautions associated with working with asbestos-containing materials. A second notice said that if you fail to draw up a construction phase plan or make arrangements for a construction phase plan to be drawn up during the pre-construction phase and before setting up a construction site. H. Morris and Company has complied with these notices, but workers claim they were never informed they were exposed to asbestos. Cunliffe, whose husband Andy was a contractor unwittingly removed asbestos, stepped down in 2023. She has since developed cancer. McCurdy and co-workers Anne-Marie Lithgow and David Niven, directors of EPIC, have also become seriously unwell. The former factory workers know they cannot establish whether or not their illnesses are linked to the site, but they do blame Morris for the failure of the project. "That man ruined my life," said Cunliffe. whose job sometimes included collecting cash from tenants, photographing it and then sending it to Morris at his other former factory near Cambuslang called Morris Park. Local politicians had high hopes for Enterprise Park. MSP James Dornan said, "After meeting with Debbie and her team, it's very clear that their goal was to provide a valuable, community-based centre for the people of Castlemilk, and as an MSP, I'm always pleased when anyone wants to bring fresh ideas to the constituency. It became very clear to me that Debbie and many of her team were suffering with poor health and under enormous amounts of strain due to the ramifications of this project. My staff have worked with Debbie for an extended period of time and attended several meetings, and, while as an elected member it would be inappropriate to comment on legalities, we hope all agencies involved would be working to ensure that health and safety standards were upheld and the best interests of Debbie and her team were at the forefront of any investigations. Castlemilk is a vibrant area full of people who work hard to ensuring community needs are met where possible, and we would hope no business person would take advantage of those people for their own monetary gain." Morris did not answer questions from the Herald on Sunday on Enterprise Park. However, his lawyer, in letters she asked us not to report, insisted her client was of good standing in the community and a business hub was materialising at the old Castlemilk factory. Morris did not just make cash, he also tried to give it away. Lithgow was let go from the factory. Hearing she too had cancer, Morris visited her at home and handed her a bag with a housecoat. Inside, hidden was an envelope with £2,000. She returned it. In the article written by David Leask. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 3rd of November, from the news section, police issue warning over Edinburgh Cowgate videos. Report by Gabriel Mackay. Police have confirmed that a man has died after being struck by a bus in Edinburgh and urged the public not to share distressing videos of the aftermath. A 74-year-old man was struck by a single-decker bus on the evening of Saturday, November the 2nd. Videos and images circulating on social media showed graphic images of the aftermath, including individuals handling what appeared to be human remains. Police Scotland said those posts had proved distressing to the family of the deceased. Unfounded social media speculation about the nature of the incident was condemned, with the force making clear there was no risk to the wider public. Sergeant Louise Birrell, Road Policing Unit, Edinburgh, said, "Our thoughts are with the family and friends of the man who died. Extensive inquiries are ongoing to establish the full circumstances of this incident. Officers have spoken to a number of people who were in the area at the time, and work is ongoing to check public and private CCTV footage. We are still keen to hear from anyone who has not yet spoken to police. If you have any information about what happened, then please get in touch. Anyone with information is asked to call the police via 101. Please quote incident number 3395 of Saturday, 2nd of November 2024. Chief Inspector Tricia Clark, the local area commander, said, "We are aware of videos and images circulating on social media which are causing distress to the deceased family and those viewing them inadvertently. We would ask members of the public not to share them out of respect for his family and to report them to the relevant social media platform to prevent further circulation. There has been a lot of speculation, and I would like to reassure the local community that this was an isolated incident and there is no risk to the wider public. This was a tragic incident. We are investigating a crash, and our road policing officers, assisted by local officers, are continuing to carry out inquiries. Anyone with concerns or any information which could assist the investigation should contact police." And that report was written by Gabriel Mackay and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 3rd of November, news. Trident removal after independence, irresponsible, by Neil Mackay. A Donald Trump win in this week's US presidential election will throw SNP policy into complete disarray, with the Scottish Government's position on Trident removal seen as unbelievably irresponsible and corrosive to European security. The warning comes from Scotland's leading expert on global security, Professor Peter Jackson. He holds the chair in global security at the University of Glasgow and is the founder and co-director of the Scottish Council on Global Affairs, which is supported by the SNP government. In a wide-ranging interview with the Herald on Sunday about the consequences of a Trump win for Scotland, Britain, Europe, America and the world, Jackson explored the issue of SNP policy relating to NATO and the Trident nuclear deterrent. The SNP voted in 2012 to ditch its 30-year policy of opposition to NATO. The Scottish Government's position is now to apply for NATO membership in the event of independence, but also to pursue removal of Trident from Scotland. Jackson noted that matters would come to a head should support for independence start rising again, and there is a push for another referendum. Rising support, he believes, would be predicated on future policy decisions made by a Westminster government upsetting the Scottish electorate. Trump is hostile to NATO, and there are doubts about his commitment to Article 5 of the alliance, which guarantees mutual defence in the event of attack. Trump has even encouraged Vladimir Putin to attack NATO allies. Britain, together with France, provides the only nuclear deterrent on the continent. Friction with NATO could also be problematic for the SNP's long-term aim of rejoining the European Union, should independence ever be achieved. Jackson says that America's intelligence community and security establishment are horrified at the prospect of Scottish independence creating a hole in the fence when it comes to NATO. The SNP has sorted its NATO problem, but I don't think it's sorted its Trident problems, he said. That would still have to be negotiated and, in the world we're talking about, doing something rash to Britain's nuclear deterrent would be unbelievably irresponsible. There is no question that Trident removal would play into Russian hands. It would diminish the credibility of Article 5, and that's just the opposite of what we need for European security. Trident removal would be deeply corrosive to European security. If US commitment to support European allies under Article 5 were in doubt thanks to a Trump presidency, Scotland removing Trident would increase panic. An effective and completely operational Trident is hugely important to the UK's force posture and NATO's force posture. So this is a dilemma that supporters of Scottish independence will need to wrestle with. In my view, there are some persuasive arguments for independence, but international security probably isn't one of them. Trade, yes. The security of Trident is of fundamental importance. Independence, he said, cannot be seen to undermine European security. That's why if you speak to the Lithuanians, Latvians or even the Finns, they hate the idea of Scottish independence. An independent Scotland would be strategically important for security in the Arctic and the Five Eyes intelligence system. Scotland's geography makes it absolutely vital for early warning. Scotland has this position that's more important than people realise in terms of intelligence gathering strategically. Jackson added, within the wider Holyrood establishment, I don't think they understand how completely integrated Scotland would need to be in NATO if independence happened. Removing Trident if Trump were president would come amid an international order that will have been weakened, if not be in disarray. It will be a lot less stable than it is now. There are diplomats, Jackson says, who understand the argument for independence, but only still very much as an independent Scotland embedded in NATO. Scotland's position in terms of the Arctic impacts US, UK and European security. The best, most sane policy for the SNP during any future debate on independence is to make Trident removal a bargaining chip to help smooth Brexit-style negotiations with London, rather than an immediately achievable aim. Scotland should consider leasing Faslane in the short term on the understanding that Trident would be relocated at some future point. Jackson says, Russia unquestionably interfered in the 2014 referendum. However, since then, Kremlin disinformation operations have become much more sophisticated and now incorporate AI. He believes Scotland would experience a firehouse of disinformation if there were another referendum, adding, it's in Russia's interest to weaken the UK overall. Given that leading figures in the Yes movement have appeared on Russia Today, the Kremlin's propaganda channel, including former First Minister Alex Salmond, who fronted his own show, Jackson noted that from an international perspective, the legacy and the history of the SNP isn't encouraging. In an article written by Neil Mackay, writer at large.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of November 2024, from the Voices section. We must focus on computing science for the young. Article written by Quintin Cutts. Every parent shares some confusion these days over the impact of technology on our children. There are so many conflicting stories out there. We hear graduate salaries for IT jobs are approaching those for law and finance, and AI is reportedly jeopardizing many traditional white-collar jobs at the same time. Meanwhile, some countries are choosing to ban smartphones for under 16s amid reports of children being blackmailed by social media predators. So what are parents to do? Can we keep children safe from technology's harms while helping them learn the skills they'll need to succeed in the future? Having spent 20 years working with school computing education, and now as co-lead of STACS, a government-funded teacher association for Scottish computing teachers, I am deeply concerned with these questions. We believe the key to the conundrum is to separate the use of technology from being able to understand and create it. As many experts argue, including psychologist Jonathan Haidt, children should be off smartphones. Sound intellectual development requires them to be playing outdoors and socializing face-to-face, kept away from social media distractions and safeguarded against dangerous content online. However, while protecting children from technology's dangers, we must also prepare them for a future where digital technologies will be involved in virtually every aspect of their lives. The Industrial Revolution was based on automating physical processes. Today, economic prosperity depends on automating information processes. Driving a car, checking out at a supermarket, even writing an essay, these are all information processes that have been or are being automated. We don't need everyone to be a software developer, but everyone should be able to spot opportunities for information automation, no matter their job or career. This requires understanding of how technology works, crucial also for making informed decisions about computing technology like AI in our society. That understanding develops from early exposure to principles underpinning the technology revolution, thinking about the world in terms of the information and processes involved. We lay important intellectual underpinnings in primary schools across the traditional sciences, maths, and the humanities. We need to do the same for computing science. Scotland is well placed to achieve this goal. We have a school computing science curriculum already in place from the early years. With the establishment of STACS in 2022, the Scottish Government has funded teachers to bring the computing science teacher community together, including primary and early years teachers, and to create high-quality classroom materials, most recently for primary schools. We aren't there yet, though. While our and others' research shows that computing science is a subject that can and should be learned by anyone, currently there are significant attainment gaps. We need more girls and children from a wider range of backgrounds to take up the subject to help Scotland reach its potential as a tech leader. To achieve this, we need more consistent provision across primary and secondary schools. Parents can help make it happen by talking to their children's schools about their computing science provision. Materials developed by STACS can help get things going in primary schools to give secondary teachers a massive head start. Ask for more. Your children need it, and so does our society. Quintin Cutts is Professor of Computer Science Education at the University of Glasgow's School of Computing Science. That article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of November 2024, from the Voices section. Scotland's retail industry still committed to net zero goal. Article written by David Lonsdale. It's exactly 3 years since the United Nations came to Glasgow to hold its COP26 conference on climate change. It was exhilarating to see so many countries come together in Scotland's largest city to deliver tangible progress and momentum towards tackling the climate crisis. Progress since, however, has not always been smooth. The economic and social hangover from COVID and the subsequent conflict in Ukraine and resulting cost of living crunch, amongst other global factors, have often taken up the focus and energies of policymakers. However, from the outset, retailers were clear about the route forward and the need to build the net zero retail industry of tomorrow, regardless of the myriad immediate pressures facing the sector. Solid progress has been made towards fulfilling the industry's ambition, set out the year before COP26 in the Retail Consortium's Climate Action Roadmap, to make the sector and its supply chains carbon neutral by 2040. Leading retail brands, including the likes of Shoe, Scottmid, Sea Salt and Tesco, not only committed collectively to putting climate action at the heart of their decision-making, but are beavering away on achieving it. It won't be easy, especially as these firms have pledged to decarbonise stores, deliveries, logistics and products by 2040, whilst helping customers to live low-carbon lifestyles. As the industry's trade body, we've spent the past few years ensuring these firms have the tools they need through benchmarking, guidance, seminars and workshops. Retail is taking its environmental responsibilities seriously. This explains why the industry is simultaneously acting on nature and biodiversity loss too. Retailers increasingly recognise that a thriving, stable and biodiverse natural environment and ecosystem underpins their current and future operations. Implementing sustainable business practices is about conservation and the husbanding of our natural resources as well as decarbonising. Moreover, action on the former can help mitigate carbon emissions. To be able to continue to sell the range of products we have today, the industry must ensure it helps protect and regenerate the Earth's finite resources. Nature and biodiversity have shot up the business agenda as retailers seek to build more resilient and sustainable long-term supply chains, whilst responding to increasing demand from customers and legislators. Last month, we published a plan for nature, backed by MSPs from across the political spectrum, to help the industry on its journey towards comprehensive action and becoming nature positive. This includes webinars and events to demystify the relationship between retail and nature and help aid understanding of the challenges, assistance to help shopkeepers measure their impact on nature and minimise biodiversity loss, and advice on how to develop strategies and set and achieve transparent targets. Getting to grips with the issue isn't straightforward. Even ensuring accurate data collection from a retailer's own operations, let alone the full spectrum of suppliers, isn't simple, nor is navigating new regulatory and reporting requirements. These reporting requirements come as governments seek to deliver on new global targets and implement and enforce rules on sourcing from deforested areas, bans on the sale of peat and microplastics, and ensuring sustainable fisheries. The new UK government says it wants to be the most nature-positive administration we've ever had, halting, and indeed reversing, the loss of habitats and species. It's even put the issue at the heart of its foreign policy and appointed an international ambassador for nature. Meanwhile, from our research, shoppers tell us they want brands to help them make better choices and to live sustainably, and are prepared to back their ethics with their custom. Changing the way retailers operate is never easy. It will require huge investments of time, effort and money, which is trickier to find when statutory costs, like employers' national insurance contributions and business rates, are being hiked. It will also require a supportive framework from government at a time when stores are already grappling with new policy initiatives, including extended producer responsibility for packaging, which is due to come into effect next year, plans for a levy on disposable cups, and the deposit return scheme for drinks bottles and cans due in 2027. Ultimately, however, it makes good business sense. Retailers see themselves as part of the solution and are determined to bring about the zero-carbon and nature-positive future we all want and need. David Lonsdale is Director of the Scottish Retail Consortium. That article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald, Monday the 4th of November 2024, from the Voices section. Unhappy situation for UK economy struggling for growth. Article written by Ian McConnell. It has been quite a week, with Rachel Reeves delivering a seismic budget. Given the number of budgets and other fiscal events during years of political turbulence, it was always going to take something special to really grab the attention. And it was not clear in the run-up to Wednesday's debut from the Chancellor that Labour would deliver such a budget. The mood music was all about tough times and constraints and a black hole in the public finances. It all sounded a bit like what we got from former Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron in 2010, as he got going with his utterly foolish and counterproductive austerity drive. And this all suggested it might be more of the same from Labour, with the new government essentially just following on from where the Tories left off. Then again, this was the first Labour budget in 14 years, and that 14-year period had seen some very poor policy making from the Conservatives, so it was hardly a surprise that Labour should want to address in a big way what it portrayed as major Tory failures. Ms Reeves, who highlighted the fact she was the UK's first female Chancellor, set the tone early on, declaring the budget would deliver tax rises totalling £40 billion a year. And it was revealed in short order that £25 billion of this hike in the annual tax take would be coming from a rise in employers' national insurance contributions. Unsurprisingly, the backlash from business was swift and sharp-tongued. The Chancellor then set out measures to raise a further £2.5 billion a year from capital gains tax, and to increase substantially the inheritance tax take. There was also the anticipated rise in the energy profits levy, probably better known as the windfall tax, which has major implications for the North Sea. Financial markets took the huge moves in a budget, which also revealed big rises in spending and borrowing, in their stride. There was no doubting the boldness of the budget. The OBR's observations on borrowing and spending, in its economic and fiscal outlook, highlight the true scale of Ms Reeves' budget measures. It says, "This budget delivers a significant and sustained loosening of fiscal policy, which increases borrowing by £35 billion, 1.2% of GDP, gross domestic product, in 2025-26, and by £30 billion, 0.9% of GDP, in 2029-30. It adds, "This increase in borrowing relative to our pre-measures forecast is the net result of a £72 billion, 2.1% of GDP, increase in spending in 2029-30, around two-thirds of which is current spending and one-third capital spending, and a £42 billion, 1.2% of GDP, increase in taxes in 2029-30, of which over half comes from an increase in employer national insurance contributions." Unfortunately, however, the big budget measures did not translate into any significant brightening of the UK's growth outlook. The UK growth forecast for this year has been revised up to 1.1% from 0.8% at the time of the March budget by the OBR, and the 2025 growth prediction has been edged up from 1.9% in March to 2%. However, growth forecasts for 2026, 2027 and 2028 are all lower than in March. Growth in 2026 is now expected to be 1.8%, down from the previous 2% projection. The OBR's prediction for growth in 2027 has been reduced from 1.8% to 1.5%, and the projection for expansion in 2028 has been cut from 1.7% to 1.5%. The OBR's growth forecast for 2029 is 1.6%. The issue of UK growth was seized upon in the wake of the budget by European Movement UK, a cross-party organisation campaigning on the benefits of close ties between the UK and European Union. This organisation was formed in 1949 by Sir Winston Churchill to prevent further conflict between European countries. Professor Molly Scott-Cato, Vice President of European Movement UK, said, How can the UK economy compete against the low costs of China, the vast subsidies of America's Inflation Reduction Act, and the frictionless borders of the EU? We are told that Reeve's first budget is a budget for growth. But how is the Chancellor of a small market outside the main trade blocs of the world going to compete and achieve that growth? If we seem to be caught between a rock and a hard place, I can suggest an obvious way out: becoming again part of the single market, and not just for trading purposes. Labour has, of course, ruled out rejoining the EU or European single market. In this context, it was difficult not to raise an eyebrow when Miss Reeve said of the Conservatives in her budget speech on Wednesday, "Their Brexit deal harmed British businesses." My column in the Herald on Friday observed, "There is indeed a huge disconnect between Labour's focus on growth and its stance on the European single market. This is lamentable, given how hard growth is to come by, and the huge boost to economic activity that would be triggered if the UK were able to rejoin the single market." For its part, the OBR notes in its economic and fiscal outlook, "Weak growth in imports and exports over the medium term partly reflect the continuing impact of Brexit, which we expect to reduce the overall trade intensity of the UK economy by 15% in the long term." For the avoidance of doubt, that is a very big effect, and it is not a happy one for a UK economy that does not have its troubles to seek. That article was written by Ian McConnell and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of November 2024, from the Voices section. Unpicking what the budget means for workers. Article written by Ros Foyer, STUC General Secretary. The budget from the Chancellor of the Exchequer was 14 years in the making. Good things come to those who wait, but we could hardly wait any longer. As the dust settles, it's left to us to digest what this will mean for workers. For many, the budget brings relief with measures aimed at raising the minimum wage, using substantial tax increases to invest in public services, and closing loopholes predominantly used by the wealthy. As usual, there were howls of derision from some in the commentariat, with inaccurate, if amusing, declarations this was communism on corticoids or socialism on steroids. Truth be told, it was neither. It was a start. A good start. In fact, the STUC went as far to say it was impressive and eye-opening, and puts investment into our public services front and centre. The Chancellor's decision to raise £40 billion in taxes can hardly be considered chump change either. Yes, it could have been more. This budget didn't introduce the new wealth and property taxes we so urgently need. A straightforward 2% tax on wealth on assets over £10 million could have raised £24 billion per year. And while it's correct that the Chancellor has revised her fiscal rules to count the government's financial assets, such as student loans, she could have gone further to include all assets that government owns, such as buildings and transport infrastructure. As predicted, there has been a blip in gilt prices, but nothing to suggest that these sensible measures to increase borrowing has outright spooked the markets. The investment-led approach may not translate to OBR predictions of massive increases in growth, but if it ensures that more of that growth is achieved through productive higher wage activity as opposed to the low-paid services sector, it will be worth far more for our future. That is also why raising taxes to invest in public services was the correct course of action from the Chancellor. It would have been unforgivable, socially and economically, should she have chosen otherwise. Let's cut to the chase. What the Tories did for years was play fantasy politics and fantasy economics to boot, a cosplay of a serious government that, towards its dying days, did nothing more than pander to the worst and most reactionary elements of their fringes. Last week started to change that. Tax rises are generally unpopular, but when the chips are down, I'm far more content to have a government that taxes and spends rather than cuts and slashes. When it comes to tackling inequality and promoting growth that is sustainable, how you spend tax revenue matters just as much as where you raise it from. This wasn't a revenue raid by Rachel Reeves to prop up city bankers or stock market yuppies. It was a targeting of taxes on employers, plus private wealth, private schools and private jets to pay for health care, education and social care. That was undoubtedly the correct call. That's before we mention the rise in the minimum wage. It doesn't yet go far enough, but it does prioritise younger workers, boosting their pay disproportionately higher than any other cohort and raising standards across the board. We'll be holding the government to account to make sure it is a step on the pathway to realising a £15 per hour starting wage for all. Coupled with the Employment Rights Bill, which gives workers greater access to collectively bargain for better rights and pay, we hope such measures negate any unintended consequences of the Chancellor's rise in employers' national insurance contributions. But we're not breaking out the bunting. The continued cut to social security represent a continuation rather than the reversal of Tory policies. This was the wrong approach from the UK government that will bite hard on those who need support the most. Further, despite all the chat about cutting a penny off your pint, not one solitary penny could be found to help pensioners stave off the cold this winter by reinstating the winter fuel allowance to all. That's before we even get onto the pernicious, cruel two-child benefit cap that, to the UK government's shame, still remains in place. There is also a risk that Reeve's current plans assume public investment falls in future years. This budget needs to mark the start of sustained investment and support for public services and infrastructure, not just a one-off splash. Still, the Chancellor has just handed down the largest block grant settlement in the history of devolution, even if it only partially compensates for years of neglect. The predicted £3.4 billion can make a real difference to Scotland's public services, boost workers' pay, and tackle long-standing issues across sectors, not least local government. First to pass should be policies the Scottish Government said they wanted to enact, but previously claimed they couldn't afford to. We could subsidise public transport, for a start. We could feed hungry pupils by rolling out free school meals, as was promised. We could make real, concrete inroads to tackle climate change and achieving a just transition. Perhaps more simply, we could pay local government workers fairly, settle the local government dispute, and pay our carers fairly. For the first time in a generation, there's an opportunity for the Scottish Government to seize the initiative and reap the rewards of working alongside a UK government that appears to respect devolution far more than the previous incumbents. Let's end the Westminster Holyrood blame game. There is power in our Parliament. There's now a pot of cash that didn't exist otherwise. But that cash should only be the start. If we want to have Scandinavian quality public services in Scotland, and we should, then we need to pay for them. If the Scottish Government start to use their own powers on tax, property and wealth, brighter days undoubtedly lie ahead, and we can make up for the 14 years of darkness we've all just had to endure. That article was written by Ros Foyer and read to you by Elizabeth.
From Herald Scotland, Monday, 4th of November 2024. From the STEM section of the business section. Scots Uni finds AI's ability to change who we find attractive. Article by Mark McDougall. A Scottish university has found AI facial filters that could have the power to influence who people are attracted to. The research, led by the University of Glasgow, used AI to create real-time face transformations to investigate the social signals that influence the beginnings of romantic attraction. The study is the first to show that using AI to digitally alter smiles during conversations can clearly influence the assumptions individuals make about each other, impacting their own actions and their romantic feelings. Volunteers were asked to participate in a set of video conference speed dating sessions by researchers. During each date, the team used AI transformations to align or misalign the smile of participants by either increasing or decreasing their smiling appearance in real time. The filters are similar to ones commonly found on social media apps including Snapchat, Instagram and TikTok, but were highly realistic and not obvious to participants in the study. It was found that even though participants were completely unaware their faces were being transformed, it enhanced their romantic attraction towards each other when compared to scenarios when their smiles weren't aligned. Participants weren't seeing their own faces being transformed, but it still affected their own attraction ratings via feedback loops. The effect of the AI-based smiles was so powerful that they also impacted participants' reactions, including their own vocal behaviour and their desire to mirror each other's facial expressions. They also believed the other person was more attracted to them when the researchers increased the smiles seen in their dating partner. At the end of the experience, they were informed their face had been transformed using filters and informed about the potential influence the transformations may have had in their interactions. Dr. Pablo Arias Sara, lead author of the study from the University of Glasgow's School of Psychology and Neuroscience, said, "This study highlights the potential impact that face transformation filters, when meticulously calibrated, can have on interpersonal communication. From a scientific perspective, it enables us to uncover the social parameters that can modulate the emergence of attraction between two potential romantic partners and, more generally, enable us to study how precise social factors influence how individuals interact with one another. From an ethical perspective, this study allows us to raise interesting ethical questions. In coming years, it seems inevitable that AI-based face and voice filters will become increasingly realistic and prevalent on social media. Yet it remains largely unknown how these technologies might influence the social behaviour of others. As recently done for other new technologies, for example deep fakes, a clear ethical guideline about the use and regulation of these technologies might be required. The study, Aligning the Smiles of Dating Dyads Causally Increases Attraction, is published in PNAS. The study was funded by the Swedish Research Council, the European Research Council, and UK Research and Innovation, that is UKRI, and that article was written by Mark McDougall.
From Herald Scotland, Monday, 4th of November 2024. From the STEM section of the business section. Sea trials for world first Scottish-made wing sail ship. Article by Brian Donnelly. Sea trials for a groundbreaking wing sail it is claimed could help revolutionise marine transport have started. The lightweight, retrofit, recyclable fast rig is built in Glasgow and has been installed on the Pacific Grebe for the trials. The ship has now docked in Greenock to allow project partners, the Scottish Government, ship owners and financiers the opportunity to see the technology in action. Previously, Fast Rig underwent 5 months of land-based trials at Hunterston in North Ayrshire that proved the robustness of the engineering. The sea trials of Fast Rig will conclude in November. The purpose of the sea trials is to corroborate lab-based modelling by the University of Southampton that predicted fuel and greenhouse gas savings with Fast Rig installed of up to 30% per year on transatlantic routes. The independently verified performance data will allow smart green shipping to predict cost savings with Fast Rig technology on any suitable ship, on any route, and provide the market with evidence-based decision-making tools. Fast Rig is entirely manufactured in Scotland. Smart Green Shipping works in collaboration with Scottish engineering companies 360 Energy, formerly Cayley Ocean Group, and Malin Group, combining proven technologies from renewables, oil and gas, and marine engineering in new ways, building on Scottish expertise to develop a new global export market. Smart Green Shipping has received investment from Scottish Enterprise, co-investing alongside one of the world's leading shipping companies,
MOL Dry Bulk, and won a £1.8 million research and development grant. Last week, the company announced a £1 million cash injection from the renewable energy company Drax. The Department for Transport estimates that up to 40,000 ships worldwide are suitable for wind-powered propulsion. According to Lloyd's Register, the uptake of wind-assist technology to decarbonise global shipping is at a tipping point. Smart green shipping will begin its first commercial installations on vessels in 2025. Anas Sarwar, leader of Scottish Labour, said, "Global shipping emits around 3% of total greenhouse gas emissions. That is more than countries like Germany or Brazil, and emissions from the sector are still rising. This is a global export opportunity for Scotland that will enable a hard-to-carbonise sector to deploy powerful, close-to-market technology that saves money and fuel costs. This will create good green jobs and wealth for Scotland." Diane Gilpin, Chief Executive of Smart Green Shipping, said, "At Smart Green Shipping, we understand that the world is at a critical climate juncture, and we must play our role in driving down emissions in shipping. It's imperative that we shift from a conventional, fuel-dominated, business-as-usual approach and embrace this abundantly available direct energy source. Wind assist solutions are key to reducing shipping emissions in line with science. Scotland has been an integral part of our journey to develop smart green shipping's technology, and we will continue to collaborate with its high-quality manufacturing and engineering expertise as we go to scale production." Barbara McIntyre, Engineering and Operations Director of 360 Energy, said, 360 Energy have more than 50 years of experience developing mechanical handling solutions with our in-house engineering team. This expertise positions us perfectly to support Smart Green Shipping's mission to create robust, affordable fast rigs that we can roll out rapidly into the global fleet to reduce fuel cost and emissions. We have a wealth of experience developing simple solutions to complex challenges, bringing products to market, ensuring cost-effective, robust and reliable design for manufacture. By integrating strongly with our supply chain, we design in manufacturability and select components for long service life. And that article was written by Bruce Donnelly.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 6th of November 2024, from the Voices section. The kids will be all right without an inheritance, won't they? This article is by Alison Rowett. From employers and home buyers to pensioners and the parents of private school pupils, the queue of those complaining about Rachel Reeves' budget grows longer by the day. Just when things can't get any stickier for the Chancellor, along comes Ruth Davidson, waving a steak bake. The former leader of the Scottish Conservatives has compared imposing inheritance tax on farms to the pasty tax, an idea from the mind of Tory Chancellor George Osborne, no less, so obviously wicked it was reversed soon after. The NFU says it has never seen farmers as angry as they are over the inheritance tax move. Many fear they won't be able to hand farms to their sons and daughters without landing them with a huge tax bill. Farms will go out of business, they warn. Food supplies will suffer. The government says only a minority of the wealthiest landowners will be hit. Wiser heads might have warned Reeves to steer clear of anything that interferes with people's desire to do what they want with their money once they reach a certain point in life. There's a lot of such meddling about. Anyone fortunate enough to have money to pass on faces no end of advice about what to do with it. The children expect an inheritance. Charities need your money, or good causes will suffer. This Labour government wants to take from the old and give to the young. It is a way of thinking that belongs to an age that is going fast. People are now living longer, healthier lives. Why shouldn't they spend whatever money they have on themselves? Blow the lot, and to heck with other people's expectations. While not a view you will hear expressed openly, it is out there and attracting a growing band of believers. New industries are springing up to satisfy the desire for a different way of doing things. Take retirement homes. At the moment, most people over 50 go on the same path. The family home becomes too big and too dear, and so you downsize. You live in the new place, which is not ideal, as long as you can, helped by family and care services if you are lucky. When your care needs increase, it is off to sheltered housing, then a retirement home, and finally a nursing home, paid for by the sale of your house. Watch the money drain away at an eye-watering rate. You could wait for governments to finally get their act together and reform social care, but you know that is not going to happen, because it would cost too much and the country is broke. So, what else can you do? At the start of the noughties, there was a trend inspired by the film The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, of pensioners moving abroad to make their money go further. Most only went as far as Europe rather than India, and many still dream of doing so today, if programs such as A Place in the Sun are any guide. Brexit put paid to much of that, and when illness or bereavement strikes, people want to come home. But what if you could move somewhere in this country? A place that might not have the weather, but guarantees luxury surroundings, company whenever you want it, hot and cold running activities, and a quick access to a doctor whenever you wish. You may have seen the type of thing in The World's Most Luxurious Retirement Homes, a Channel 5 documentary still available on catch-up. Basically, although there was nothing basic about any of the places, they were fancy hotels that rented suites long-term. The prices, some cost $100,000 a year, ensured only the seriously rich could live there. As is capitalism's way, the idea has been taken up and scaled down to become a more achievable proposition. Options now include round-the-world cruises that you can stay on for years, or leave and rejoin as you fancy. If bricks and mortar are more your thing, luxury developments are opening around the UK, including Glasgow, to cater for the well-off and well. Each flat is fully furnished and ready to rent or buy. Some firms offer help with decluttering your old home before you sell, so you can make a fresh start in every sense. If that is still too rich, there is always banding together with friends to buy a place. More purchasing power equals a bigger, better, more accessible home, and you would never be lonely. Sharing a house is not for everyone, mind. But what about sharing a street? Living a few doors down from family or friends? Everybody remains independent, but near enough to keep an eye on each other. It is easy to find the faults in such ideas. No matter how much the model is adapted, it will still be beyond the means of many people. It is essentially trying to recreate what we used to have, communities and homes that generations would share. And what happens when you need nursing care? Providing that would soon eat into the profits of a luxury hotel. You might still end up in a nursing home, and you will have burned through the money that could have gone to help others. Perhaps that is the biggest obstacle standing in the way of blowing it all. It could be seen as selfish, uncaring, and irresponsible, especially to children who may never have enough to get on the housing ladder. Something has to give, however. With fertility rates falling, the number of older people increasing, and attitudes against immigration hardening, there will soon be fewer people around to take care of any of us. Becoming self-sufficient as much as you can, for as long as you can, will be the goal for most of us. But life should be about thriving, not just surviving. Like millions of others, I have been much struck by the way Sir Chris Hoy is dealing with a terminal cancer diagnosis and his wife Sarah's multiple sclerosis. If you did not see the interview with the Olympic champion last night, it is on iPlayer and BBC Sounds. One piece of advice in particular resonated: to take that thing you have always planned to do one day and do it today. Whatever our daily frustrations and concerns, we should never forget how lucky some of us are to reach old age at all. That article was by Alison Rowett. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 6th of November 2024 from the business section. Former Santander Managing Director joined Scottish startup. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A Scottish startup has hired a senior executive with experience across banking ahead of its launch. Zapity, described as a secure file sharing, storage and collaboration platform created for SMEs, hailed the appointment of the former Santander Managing Director. Stuart Montgomery will be Chief Strategy Officer and Advisor for the Glasgow business. The firm said that, with a distinguished career in the finance industry, Mr. Montgomery brings a wealth of expertise in strategic growth and business transformation to the Zapity team. Mr. Montgomery, a recognized leader in investment banking, has held executive roles at Santander and the Royal Bank of Scotland, and has a proven track record in driving operational efficiency and sustainable business development. The firm said his deep knowledge within financial services, particularly in areas of resourcing, capital raising and risk management, will be instrumental as Zapity continues its mission to provide secure and seamless file sharing and collaboration solutions for business. David Stickland, co-founder and chief executive of Zapity, said, "We are delighted to welcome Stuart to Zapity. His experience and strategic insight will be invaluable as we scale our platform and meet the needs of an underserved client base. With Stuart on board, we are well positioned to accelerate our growth ambitions and continue delivering exceptional value to our clients and partners." Mr. Montgomery said, "I am thrilled to join Zapity at such an exciting stage in its development. The platform's approach to file sharing and collaboration is transformative, and I'm looking forward to helping shape the company's strategy to drive its impact and expand its reach across new markets. As Zapity gets ready to launch the new platform, Mr. Montgomery's guidance as Chief Strategy Officer and Advisor will play a crucial role in shaping the company's direction, with the firm adding his expertise will be key in refining Zapity's offering and expanding its investor base in the UK and beyond. That article was by Brian Donnelly.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate and review, and to tell your friends about our service.